What if everything you think you know about the Madeleine McCann case is nothing but a carefully constructed lie? For 17 years, Apartment 5A has whispered dark secrets, and today, unsettling revelations threaten to come to light. Get ready. Some people would do anything to keep this truth buried. Want to be part of this investigation and be the first to discover the next clues? Sign up now and activate the notification bell, ensuring that no revelation goes unnoticed. The night was calm in the village of Praia da Luz, Portugal. The streets were narrow, illuminated by streetlights casting a yellowish, soft light, creating long shadows in the alleys. At Ocean Club, a simple and welcoming resort, families enjoyed the tranquility. It was the kind of place where people came to escape the routine, relax, and believe that nothing bad could happen. Apartment 5, where the McCanns were staying, seemed just like any other among many. A vacation apartment like any other, with glass doors opening to a small patio and inconspicuous furniture. Everything indicated a common and peaceful night. Until it wasn't. Jerry and Kate McCann, both British doctors, were on vacation with their 3 young children. Madeleine, 3 years old, was the eldest, with her a blonde hair and curious eyes. Since she was a baby, she liked to sleep cuddled with her stuffed cat, Inarorani Cuddle Cat, who accompanied her wherever she went. The couple also had twins, Sean and Amelie, only 2 years old, who were calm and slept easily. Kate tried to be a perfect mother, but every gesture showed the invisible weight she carried, the distant look, the short breath, as if the very act of existing was exhausting. Between work responsibilities and raising 3 young children, she struggled to keep everything under control. Jerry, more outgoing and straightforward, tried to keep the family united, but it was clear that the strain was also affecting him. That trip was an opportunity to recharge and spend time together, something they hadn't been able to do for a long time. On that night of May 3rd, 2007, the routine seemed to follow its normal course. The children had been in bed since 8:30 p.m., exhausted after a whole day playing in the pool. Madeleine was sleeping cuddled with her cuddle cat, with the blankets carefully arranged by Kate before leaving the room. The mother took one last look at the children and left, leaving the bedroom door slightly ajar. The couple had arranged to have dinner with friends at the resort's restaurant, just a few meters from the apartment. Kate and Jerry felt safe leaving the children sleeping alone. After all, the plan was to check the room every 30 minutes. Was short, and the environment was calm, almost predictable. The kind of place where nothing bad could happen. It was already past 10 p.m. when Kate decided to return to the apartment to see if the children were okay. The night was silent, and the path from the restaurant to 5A was quick. A few steps under the dim streetlights and done. Kate carefully opened the back glass door to avoid making noise and entered the apartment. Everything seemed calm. The air was fresh, and the gentle sound of the waves could be heard in the background. She went straight to the children's room. Kate stopped halfway. The door was more open than she remembered. Someone had passed by. She just didn't know when or who. Her heart raced, but she tried to convince herself it was nothing. Maybe a draft had pushed the door open. With slow steps, she entered the room and looked at the beds. The twins were sleeping deeply. Madeleine's bed, however, was empty. Cuddle Cat was there, perfectly positioned next to the pillow, as if someone had deliberately placed the toy there. Kate felt a chill down her spine. "Madeleine," she called, her voice low and shaky. No response. She looked under the bed, opened the closet, and ran to the bathroom. Nothing. The warm wind passing through the open window swayed the curtains. What was once a familiar and welcoming environment now seemed sinister. Why was the window open? It was then that she realized the blinds had been raised and someone had passed by. Feeling her breath catch, Kate ran towards the restaurant, her face pale and eyes wide. "They took Madeleine!" she shouted to Jerry, who jumped up so quickly that his chair fell backward. The friends' table fell silent for a few seconds, and then everyone stood up, panic taking over. Jerry and some friends ran to the apartment while Kate tried to explain what had happened. The search began immediately, but there was no sign of Madeleine anywhere. How does a 3-year-old child disappear without a trace? The police were called, but it seemed their arrival took an eternity. Deep down, Kate already knew that every lost minute decreased the chances of finding her daughter. She paced back and forth, desperate, while friends and resort staff scoured every corner of the complex. But Madeleine was nowhere to be found. And that's how it all began. An apparently ordinary night in a place that seemed safe had turned into the beginning of one of the greatest mysteries of the last 17 years. When the sirens finally fell silent, Kate and Jerry awaited relief, but all they felt was an even heavier burden. Every lost minute seemed to erase another clue, and every mistake made by the agents pushed them into new anguish. Instead, it was the beginning of a series of frustrations. The local agents seemed lost, not knowing exactly what to do. No one secured the scene. People were coming in and out of the apartment, and every step seemed to erase a clue that could have been vital. Kate watched, powerless, powerless as Jerry tried to stay calm, but the situation only worsened. Every minute, he became more tense, arguing with the agents. "Are you doing anything? Or are we going to have to find our daughter ourselves?" His voice wavered between anger and despair, but the response was always the same. "We are investigating. We just need time." Time. The word echoed in Kate's head like a sentence. The more time passed, the smaller the chance of finding Madeleine alive. Meanwhile, the news spread quickly. Reporters began to appear, and the case, which initially seemed a personal tragedy, soon took on gigantic proportions. The media surrounded the resort, and photographers positioned themselves at the entrances and exits, ready to capture every expression of the parents' suffering. Kate felt suffocated. There was no room for mourning, for pain. She and Jerry were pressured to make statements, and every word seemed to be measured and analyzed by eyes that weren't there to help, but to judge. But soon, the direction of the investigation changed, and everything began to point to those least expected, Kate and Jerry. And then came the question that changed everything. What are you hiding? Kate felt the ground opening up beneath her feet. First, the daughter disappears. Then the police and the media start to insinuate that maybe she and Jerry knew more than they were telling. At first, she tried to ignore these veiled accusations, but soon realized that it was impossible. The questions began to change in tone. Why did you leave your children alone that night? Why did you wash Madeleine's toy right after the disappearance? Deeply, each loaded with insinuations. Jerry tried to respond firmly, but even he felt the weight of these suspicions. "This is ridiculous," he murmured to Kate after a questioning session. "They think we are guilty." Kate couldn't even respond. How could she explain something she didn't even understand? How to convince someone that she hadn't done anything, if not even the police believed her anymore? Nights became unbearable. Kate couldn't sleep. When she closed her eyes, she saw Madeleine's face, heard her laughter echoing in her mind. Every time she woke up, she felt a knot in her stomach, the brutal reminder that her daughter was still missing. And the worst part was knowing that the people around her no longer believed her. Not even some of the friends who were with them that night seemed to fully trust. "What if they believe we did this?" Kate whispered to Jerry one night, her voice low and shaky. He held her hands tightly. "They can't believe that. We will find Madeleine, and everything will become clear." But deep down, even Jerry began to doubt if they would find their daughter. And with each passing day, the doubts only grew. It was during a critical phase of the investigation that the sniffer dogs arrived. 2 dogs specialized in detecting the scent of blood and the odor of corpses were brought to the apartment. Jerry and Kate watched the scene from a distance, anxious. It was as if they were trapped in a kind of nightmare where everything could get worse at any moment. The dogs were released into the apartment. A heavy silence took over the place. The sniffer dog advanced slowly, as if chasing a ghost. Behind the sofa, it stopped and then barked, a short but deafening sound. It was the smell of death. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. How was that possible? Madeleine was never dead in that place. This was a mistake. It had to be a mistake. Jerry tried to stay firm, but his expression revealed the growing tension. The second dog was taken to the trunk of the car the family had rented weeks after the disappearance. Again, the alert came. Smell of a corpse. Kate held her breath. Everything around her seemed to spin. How could there be any trace of her daughter in that car? It was impossible. She looked at Jerry, and he returned the look. But both knew what that moment meant. The line between victims and suspects had been crossed. "This is crazy," Jerry said to the officers. "These dogs are wrong." But from there on, no matter what they said, the narrative began to change. The Portuguese police now had a new theory. Maybe Madeleine had never been kidnapped. Maybe the parents themselves had hidden something. Kate collapsed on the sofa, clutching Cuddle Cat to her chest. "They won't stop until they prove we are guilty." Jerry shook his head. "We are not. The truth will come out." But deep down, neither of them seemed to truly believe it. What happens when no one else is by your side? What if the truth you tell isn't enough to save you? After the sniffer dogs alerted to the presence of corpse odor in the apartment and the rented car, everything changed. Jerry and Kate officially became the main suspects. The media wasted no time. Headlines began to insinuate that something was wrong with the story the couple was telling. Could the McCanns be guilty of their own daughter's disappearance? It was the question that repeatedly appeared in newspapers and news broadcasts. Kate and Jerry were in panic. The feeling that the world was closing in around them was unbearable. With every public statement, every new interview, everything they said seemed to turn into more evidence against them. If they tried to defend themselves, the media said they were too nervous. If they stayed silent, it was a sign of guilt. There was no escape. It seemed like everyone wanted to find a flaw. Kate spent hours sitting on the hotel room floor, staring into space, clutching Cuddle Cat. "I feel like we're alone," she whispered one night. "No one believes us." Jerry, trying to stay strong, sat beside her and held her hand. "The truth will come out." But Kate didn't respond. She knew that the truth, whatever it was, seemed to be drifting further away. And the investigation only got more complicated. The officers kept insisting on on the same questions. Why did you leave the children alone? Why was the toy washed? How did Madeleine's DNA end up in the rented car? Jerry lost his patience easily. How many times do we need to repeat that we did nothing? The tension between the couple was palpable. They were exhausted, felt cornered, and worst of all, they still had no real clue. On the night of the disappearance, began to distance themselves. At first, they still gave statements in support of the McCanns, but over time, the fear of being associated with something bigger began to push them away. Now, besides facing their daughter's disappearance, Kate and Jerry found themselves isolated with no one to trust. It was as if, with each new clue, the doubt surrounding them grew more. The situation reached its breaking point when the Portuguese police offered Kate a deal if she confessed that Madeleine had accidentally died and that they, out of fear, had hidden the body. She would receive a lighter sentence. Kate remained silent for a moment, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. "Do you really think I would be capable of that?" she asked, her voice low but full of indignation and pain. The officer stared at her expressionlessly. "We are just trying to understand what happened." Kate shook her head slowly, feeling a knot tighten her throat. Everything seemed like a dirty game. It was as if the police were more interested in solving the case with an easy confession than in finding the daughter. When Kate told Jerry about the deal, he exploded. "Do they think we're going to confess to something we didn't do? Is that it?" His voice echoed through the hotel room walls, but Kate just watched him silently. Deep down, both knew that the pressure was increasing, and with each passing day, the hope of finding Madeleine seemed more distant. Arguments between the couple also began to become more frequent. They were exhausted, on edge. Jerry wanted Kate to be firmer in interviews and show confidence, but she was sinking into guilt and fear. "They think I'm a horrible mother," she said, almost always on the verge of tears. "What if they're right?" Jerry held her face with his hands, trying to bring her back to reality. "Don't say that, Kate. We know the truth." But the truth seemed not to matter anymore, with so much misinformation and theories circulating in the media. Public opinion had already formed its verdict, and the more they tried to explain themselves, the more they seemed guilty. How do you convince someone you're not at fault when all the evidence seems to say otherwise? After months under the weight of investigations, public distrust, and media scrutiny, Kate and Jerry made a difficult decision to return to England. The return seemed like a silent surrender. There were no more active searches in Portugal, and in practice, it seemed the case was cooling down. They left Praia da Luz, leaving behind not only apartment 5A, but also a trail of unanswered questions. Madeleine remained missing, and the couple knew that, wherever they went, the weight of the suspicions would follow them. At the airport, the atmosphere was heavy. Kate held Cuddle Cat close to her chest, the same toy that had become a symbol of everything she had lost. While waiting for the flight, she and Jerry exchanged few words. There was nothing left to say. Every conversation seemed to revolve around the same unanswered questions, the same exhausted arguments. Time had turned into a silent enemy, and the only certainty left was that the world moved on, but they were forever stuck on that night of May 3rd. Back in England, the battle was far from over. Public opinion was relentless, and the suspicions did not leave with apartment 5A. Headlines continued to emerge with increasingly bizarre theories. Some newspapers claimed that the McCanns knew more than they said. Others suggested they were involved in a major cover-up. And then came the worst news of all. The Portuguese police decided to close the case. Madeleine McCann was now part of a long list of unresolved missing persons. Kate sank deeper and deeper into guilt and pain. With each passing anniversary, Madeleine's absence felt heavier. Is she out there? Is she alive? These questions never left her at peace. Jerry tried to move on, got involved in campaigns and organized fundraisers to continue the search, but Kate was stuck. She spent hours in bed, clutching her daughter's toy, looking at old photos, and imagining what Madeleine would be like now if she were still alive. No matter how hard they tried, life never returned to normal. Every attempt to start over was hindered by memories of what could have been. Year-end parties were a cruel reminder that the family was incomplete, and no matter how much they publicly said they still had hope, doubt had silently lodged itself in their hearts. They no longer knew if they would ever find Madeleine, or if they would continue living in this eternal search for something that might have already disappeared. And Madeleine's figure became a symbol in the media. The girl's disappearance was not just a family tragedy, but an international mystery. Kate and Jerry became, in the public eye, both victims and villains. They knew they could never erase the suspicions hanging over them. Even if they were innocent, the complete truth of that day day would never come to light. Time was not kind to Kate. The pain shaped her personality, turning her into a more closed-off, bitter woman. The guilt of not being there at the right time was a weight she carried every day. Some nights she woke up with her heart racing, almost hearing her daughter's voice calling her. But when she opened her eyes, the silence of the room was a brutal reminder that Madeleine wasn't there. Jerry, on the other hand, learned to use the pain as fuel. He threw himself into work in the fight to keep Madeleine's memory alive. If he couldn't find her, at least he would make sure no one forgot her. He organized campaigns, participated in interviews, and made statements to the press. With each appearance, he said the same thing: "We are still looking for our daughter." But deep down, he knew people had lost interest. Madeleine was just another tragedy in the newspaper pages, and he had no control over that. The final message, the only one that remained, is that some mysteries are never solved. Sometimes, the truth remains buried forever, suffocated by assumptions, judgments, and silences. Apartment 5A, which once housed a family on vacation, was now just a shadow of what had happened there. An empty place, full of memories that no one could unravel. And who really knew what happened that night? Did someone see something and never tell? Has someone been keeping the truth from the start? Kate still held Cuddle Cat from time to time, as if the toy were the last connection to her missing daughter. She didn't know if Madeleine would ever return, but she kept waiting. And as long as there was hope, even if minimal, she knew she couldn't give up. The story of Madeleine McCann is an enigma that, even after 17 years, still leaves us with more questions than answers. The truth might be in the shadows of Apartment 5AI, in the forgotten memories of those who were nearby that night, or perhaps kept by someone who chose silence. Has the whole world been led to believe in a sham? Or are the culprits among those who were never thoroughly investigated? In the end, what this story teaches us is that not every monster hides in the shadows. Sometimes it can be in plain sight, wearing masks of normality. Secrets can last for years, and justice doesn't always arrive in time. Kate and Jerry's pain is real, but is the truth they told as well? Or is there a piece of the puzzle that they never let us see? And what is even more frightening is to think that stories like this are not isolated cases. How many other truths remain covered, waiting to be uncovered? What if I told you that there are more cases like this, where the line between truth and lies is thin, and the answers always seem out of reach? Our next video will take you to another disturbing mystery that remains unsolved, and I promise you won't want to miss it. Subscribe now and help unveil the darkest secrets of the human mind. That way you won't miss any details of the upcoming investigations. If you've made it this far, comment, "I am a truth hunter and I don't rest until I uncover every mystery." I want to see who is with me on this journey to the end. Have you ever stopped to think that the truth is sometimes not revealed because people don't want to see it? How many lies are disguised as justice? How many stories have been sidelined to protect those who shouldn't be protected? Here at the end of this investigation, I can only say one thing: stay alert, because evil might be closer than you think. Until the next investigation.